This is SelfWork, and I'm Dr. Margaret Rutherford. At SelfWork, we discuss psychological and emotional issues and what you can do about them, whether that's learning self-acceptance, taking action, or seeking therapy or treatment. 10 years ago, I extended the walls of my practice to reach those of you who might already be knowledgeable about mental health treatment, but also to those of you who might say you'd never darken the door of a therapist. And yet, you are here. I'll answer your questions while I invite you to take a few minutes for your own self-work.
And so the point of the workbook and the point of working with someone is to really slow down that whole chain that's happening inside oneself, the loops of thoughts and feelings and actions, and beginning to break down and identify what's driving what is very unconscious and very fast.
Welcome to this week's edition of SelfWork. So here are the facts about our guest today. Courtney Smith is a coach, group facilitator, and consultant who works with individuals in Fortune 500 companies to achieve change. She is a renowned practitioner of the Enneagram personality system, which she teaches alongside other personal development tools. So she uses it along with other things that she finds important. She also is the co-author with Elise Lernan of Choosing Wholeness Over Goodness, which is a workbook that goes with Elise's initial bestseller. But Courtney's newsletter is called What We're Really Up To, and I'll have those links in the show notes. Now, again, I said these are the facts about Courtney, and it's the reason she's on SelfWork. But what I found in this interview with her, during which she also talked about my own score on the Enneagram and explained how I might figure out what's actually underneath the actual score or Enneagram number, which is very important. And why is it important? Because your motivation for being a certain way can vastly change what the trait looks like in your life. For example, you can be an achiever in order to gain wealth or power, or you can be an achiever in order to give back to the world. And something I particularly appreciate, since so much of my own work has been on the parts of all of us that we don't see in each other, the parts that are a camouflage for pain. Each trait has both a strength and a vulnerability. So there are 9 levels of the Enneagram, 9 different kinds of people, and each kind has its strengths and its vulnerabilities. So one trait isn't better than another one or one way of being. Our conversation ran over an hour as we talked about all sorts of things, but here you can hear what I thought would be the most meaningful parts of that conversation for you. Let me know if you'd like the full conversation, and I'll find a way to send it to you. Before we go on, let's hear from longtime sponsor, BetterHelp. The most common problem I hear from those seeking therapy is how hard it is to find a therapist, how long it takes, how vulnerable you feel asking around for names. BetterHelp solves those problems. After you make the first contact, their standard is to offer names of therapists to you in less than 2 days. And you can talk to them in a first session to see if it's a good fit. If so, you're on your way. But if not, rather than going through something awkward, you simply let BetterHelp know, and they'll ask what it was you didn't like and find someone else for you. You can text, chat, or talk virtually. All of those avenues are open to you. I'm a therapist because I got good therapy. I'd had no idea how much I could benefit from it, but I knew I wasn't seeing myself or my world clearly. Here's BetterHelp's offer for SelfWork listeners, 10% off your first month of sessions if you use this link, betterhelp.com/selfwork. You know, they say the best time to plant a tree is 30 years ago, but the next best is today. It's never too late to reach out and get help. BetterHelp.com/selfwork. And here's Courtney Smith. I'm just glad that, you're here and where are you? Where?
You know what? I mean, I'm loving your voice. I'm from, the Nebraska is not Arkansas. So I grew up, I know that. I grew up in Nebraska. I lived in New York City for 20 years and now I live in Santa Barbara.
Oh, Santa Barbara. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, but you lived in New York.
I lived in New York for a long time.
Yeah. But how did you get to be an Enneagram world-renowned expert? Thankfully. That's what I've read about you.
I mean, it's very similar to like, I was checking you out a little bit. I was a consultant. I went to law school. I've had a career where I've done lots of different things.
Got it.
And at one point I did take time off to have children, and that was not a great call for me. And as part of finding my way back to the workforce, that's really how I got involved with what is, now my life's work. But I started out trying to figure out why I'd made that choice and taking responsibility for it and figuring out what I wanted to do differently. And the Enneagram was one of the tools that I came across that ended up being really helpful for me. And there was something about it where, even though I was initially quite skeptical, it did feel like a language that I didn't know that I spoke.
How interesting.
And so then I just became, compulsive about it.
Mm-hmm.
It was informing more and more of what I was seeing in the workforce. When I was working with teams and giving counsel,
Mm-hmm.
I would start to do more and more on the team side. And people just started to identify that was actually what I was really, really, really good at.
Sure. I'm fascinated by this question of using the Enneagram to find out what was behind you making certain choices in your life.
Yeah. I mean, I still use it to this day. I'm in the middle of a divorce, for example, and, my type, which we can talk about, is called the loyal skeptic, which has a beautiful quality of loyalty. But it can be loyalty to systems, loyalty to traditions, loyalty to family, loyalty to an idea, a way of being. And you end up, you can self-sacrifice and self-abandon.
Right.
Because of that loyalty.
Flip side, the underbelly, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
Or the shadow,
the shadow side of loyalty. Yeah, exactly. Every setup has a catch. And so there's no free lunch, as I like to say when I'm typing someone. We're going to talk about your dark side one way or the other. And so, for me, it's been an exploration of in what ways I cost myself when I am really committed to loyalty at any cost.
You used a term just then, the dark side. I'm thinking, so all you Star Wars fans out there, that means one thing to them. But
I might just back up by saying that the Enneagram is a system that has both spiritual traditions and psychological traditions that end up informing it.
Okay.
And some of those spiritual traditions go way back thousands of years. On the Western side of what we think of spirituality.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Early Christianity, early Judaism.
I didn't know this at all. So this is fascinating.
And I can talk more about that. But so it really has both spiritual and psychological underpinnings. So the modern Enneagram system that we use and think of today was developed by a man about 50 years ago in Chile. And at the simplest level, there are 9 different types of people in the system. And then it gets progressively more complicated if you study and work with it more and more. But at the simplest level, 9 types of people. I would define personality as your observable traits.
Oh, that's a good definition.
But what makes the Enneagram, I think, really powerful, but also very unique, is it's not just looking at your observable traits to help you figure out what type you are, but it is looking underneath that at what I'm going to call the habitual, not just behaviors, but also feeling states and thought patterns that are driving those behaviors. Mm-hmm. So, for example, you might be a punctual person. I tend to run a few minutes late. Mm-hmm. And we can observe that about one another.
Yes, that's a fact, right?
That's a fact. That's a trait. And then the question is why? Like, what's the underlying feeling or belief state that causes you to show up on time?
Yeah.
And so
is it fear? Is it what? Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like you're a conscientious person. Okay. You identify with being conscientious. Why is that? Is it because you want to be well thought of? Is it because, you have an inner critic that, can't bear you showing up a few moments late and will kind of slap you on the wrist inside yourself? There's all kinds of different reasons you might have punctuality as one of your traits.
Right.
And it's those underlying reasons that, end up helping us figure out what type someone is within the system.
Okay.
Now, most of those habitual feeling and thought states are adaptive. And what I mean by that is they arose inside you as a way of helping you get your needs met or making sense of the environment in which you found yourself in early childhood.
Okay.
Like you didn't just come up out of nowhere, for example, that being on time is a good idea. Like that's an adaptive belief.
Yeah, learning.
That that evolved in you over time.
Right.
And so it's useful. The problem is that the brain then tends to double down on these belief systems and tends not to be able to hold nuance.
Oh.
And so when we have these belief structures that we invest very heavily in, we begin to lose our flexibility and adaptability with them. Because I might argue there are many times when it might be important to be late.
Yeah, that's right. I wish I'd been late to a couple of weddings of mine.
Right.
Maybe take just a few more minutes to think, do I really want to do this?
Right. And not only that, but like maybe punctuality is one of the high sides of being conscientious, but there's a shadow side of being conscientious, which is I might not have great self-talk. I don't feel good about myself.
Right.
I'm not able to take risks because I have a low tolerance for mistakes.
Exactly.
So this belief system that produces some, good behaviors or adaptive behaviors that we want to keep around, like being on time, also creates behaviors that have their own consequence. So the Enneagram really helps you sort of see that all of these different, and often these are unconscious structures, unconscious beliefs that are sort of so core to who we are that we don't even know to name them. We don't even know to articulate them.
It's just the way I am,
right.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so the Enneagram, by excavating those and giving language to those belief systems, helps you see in what ways they serve you and in what ways they produce underbellies or unconscious costs, and really facing those so that we can be more intentional and have like a full ledger in terms of, what beliefs, what sense of self do we want to use to help drive our decisions?
I have a confession. The first time I took the Enneagram, I was actually at a convention of some kind or a seminar, and it was at night, and I was by myself, and I'm going to take the Enneagram. And I took it.
As one does, like at a convention.
As one does. And I didn't like the answer.
Oh, great. Tell me all about this.
So I don't even completely remember what my score or whatever was, but it did not fit my probably fairly limited, I just wasn't, I don't want to be this part. That's not me. The Enneagram stinks,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've laughed about that so often because it's, and then when I retook it for you, actually, I think I've taken it 2 other times. I thought, yeah, this is about right. And it was probably very similar to what it was 30 years ago.
Right. I mean, I have to confess that I took my first test, I think it was like 12 years ago or something like that when I was introduced to the system. And my husband at the time also like corroborated what I learned from taking the test. And man, I was pissed.
Oh, yeah. That makes me feel so much better.
Yeah, I really, 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 really didn't like it. And I really resisted it, actually, for a long while. And, we can talk about, there are limitations to these online tests, particularly as more have proliferated. A lot of them are not scientifically validated, all that kind of stuff. So I do want people listening, if you do take an online test, to really take any of those results with a huge grain of salt. And at the same time, there is this phenomenon I've observed that when you get your type correct, there is this feeling of exposure.
Yeah.
Of, wow, that's what I'm really up to.
Yeah.
Here I'm like I'm an over-functioning people pleaser. And I might talk about, I don't like to people please, but like I'm secretly kind of proud of how much I can juggle and how much I can balance and how selfless I am. And then I read the test and I learn that actually that behavior is rooted in a need for approval.
Yeah, that kind of, it kind
And
of
you kind of
stings.
go, yeah, I kind of don't like that.
Oh,
I don't like that at all.
yeah.
And so I do say for people who are taking the test, like that ick feeling,
Mhm.
when you get your results is often a sign that you are um, pointing in the right direction
Mhm.
because it's helping you see, it's helping you face what is usually an unmet need that started very young, early in childhood, that feels very childlike because it's very old.
Right, right.
And then we kind of paste on top of it all of these very adult, adaptive, I've got my shit together
Mhm.
behaviors so that we don't have to look at the part of us that's actually yearning for something.
Right.
And the Enneagram really, when it's studied and worked with well, really asks you to look at that.
Mhm. The phrase keeps coming up in my head as I listen to you, and of course, I can't wait to say it.
Oh, I can't wait to hear it.
Is often in therapy, people will say, but I'm feeling worse than I did when I came in.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, typically that could be for several different reasons, but one of them possibly could be is because we're doing exactly what, we're brushing away the part that, or we're putting aside the part that you feel good about in your life and that you can own and claim. And it's easy to claim that. It's harder to claim the stuff that is, as you use the word vulnerable, it's more hidden and you haven't, perhaps it's been cultivating, and perhaps it's been what's the word I want to use? Active in your life, but you have just not been aware of it. So,
yeah, I mean, when I'm a practitioner and I coach and work with people and individually and in small groups. And so one of the things I do is I combine the Enneagram because it really is a map of who you are, but then it needs to be used in conjunction with different modalities and tools to help you make change in your life. And so that facing is a really big moment, I think, in one's journey to be in contact with self is to feel like it may be uncomfortable, but at least now I'm really with myself.
So if I were a SelfWork listener right now, I might be wondering, well, wait a minute, what if the only avenue or the major avenue open to me is to take the online Enneagram? But then you say, well, that's not enough. I mean, maybe you shouldn't completely, swallow that whole, as we'd say in Arkansas.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. So I appreciate you asking that question. My recommendation would be to take, if you can, one of the tests that cost like even $15, $20, like makes a distinction between the like ones that are free and take 2 minutes. And I'd like one that has like, at least 50 questions because then I think you're going to get higher validity. But then I would really, the point of the system is not to help you find a type. The point of the system is to help you build self-awareness so that you can both be with and work with who you really take yourself to be. Like that's the ultimate goal. And so I would really take those first results as kind of like the first move in a game.
Oh, how interesting.
And it says, I get the results and I would look at my top 2 or 3. And I would say, okay, it starts out with 9 types. I've now narrowed it down to 2 or 3. I'm going to now read some books or read some online material. And I'm going to just live in an inquiry process for the next, let's say, 3 months. Which of these types helps me make more sense of my experience?
Right.
So that's one thing. And so I would use it as just a stepping stone, a first shot across the bow, or whatever that phrase is.
So let's take a break and we'll be back in just a moment. So would the theory pose that, it's a graduate school word, would
I'm hanging with you. I
posit,
got
actually,
it.
that's the right word, posit, that you are either in those top two or three would remain consistent throughout your lifetime?
Yeah. So this is another really good question. So I first want to back up and say that part of the reason that the online tests, I think, are not, there's many reasons. There's a bit of a paradox where the system is designed to build self-awareness, but your level of self-awareness predicts the validity of the test, the results of the test.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, of course.
So that's one thing that like we just can't get around.
And are you being honest?
Right. Are you willing to be real with yourself? Mm-hmm. But the second thing is because the different 9 different types in the Enneagram are not just about these observable traits, but they're about this often unconscious habitual feeling patterns and thinking patterns. Mm-hmm. It's really hard for a forced answer, kind of 150, yes, no, 1 to 5 question to help you get at parts of yourself that are often unconscious. Mm-hmm. And so part of the reason you get, like your results, for example, there are 4 types that are within a couple of points of each other.
Oh, wow.
And so I look at that and say, well, there are some certain observable traits that are common across all of those types. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Having never met Margaret before, who knows? Mm-hmm. I can look at these results and say, some of those traits, she knows that about herself. Mm-hmm. But in terms of figuring out the why is she doing those traits? Mm-hmm. Then I would start to ask more questions because, just to use your results, the reason a helper people pleases and has trouble saying no is different than why an achiever.
Wait a minute. Wait, me?
So that's one question. And that's one answer, which is, if you take the test, in the evening at a convention center, and then 10 years later, take the test again and you get different results, it's not that who you are has shifted. It's about the test itself sort of meeting you where you are in that moment and your own self-awareness and the quality of the test. That being said, most people who work with the Enneagram do believe that the type that you are born with is the type that you have for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. You don't switch types. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I think makes the system interesting is within each type, there is what we would call a range of health. And so if you sort of go back to your idea, which is most of these strategies, even though they might look really different from one type to the other, most of these strategies are about not facing and trying to manage uncomfortable feelings mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. on the inside. Mm-hmm. And the more I can cultivate an ability to be with those uncomfortable feelings, I'm not going to get a new program or a new set of habits. The brain doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. I'm still within my exam. I'm type 6 loyal skeptic. I'm still a type 6, but I'm just in the lower range of what we look like, mm-hmm. which is whining, complaining, reactive, scared, not filled with agency, kind of ping-ponging around, like letting off steam, negative. When I'm doing well, I have a much more stable, grounded, just sort of sense of all is well. And because all is well, I can offer that to others.
And would you go along with, I think this was one of Brene Brown's initial points. She's made many since then. But for example, I can be very impatient, and waiting in line and that kind of thing. I don't think it's that I think I should go to the front of the line. It's not that. It's just I'm way over aware of time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But when I've admitted that to myself, it's not a trait that I particularly care for in myself. For example, my son used to, because he could always pick up on how impatient I was in the grocery store line. And he goes, "Mom, you got a plane to catch?" I'd go, "No," but I wouldn't be defensive about it. I would be, I know I'm impatient and I'm being impatient and you caught me being impatient. And so let's laugh about it, or let's, I can just go, "Yep, I'm acting impatient." So it takes some of the power not away from it, but I don't have to defend against, "No, I'm not impatient," when I just say, "Yeah, sure I am." It goes along with being something better,
Yeah. And my guess is, again, having just met you, but that's a great example of a particular behavior. And my guess is there's some sort of underlying assumption there about like, Margaret, need to be productive at all times.
Yes, indeed.
Because if I'm not productive, I'm not adding value.
You betcha.
And then that's caused me probably to overachieve, to, do a lot of really beautiful things. But at the same time, that means that then when I get caught in a situation where I just have to be, I can't be doing, I can't be in productivity mode and feeling like I'm advancing towards a goal, that begins to feel really uncomfortable to me. And then that impatience arises that you're describing. And, Margaret on a bad day might cut in line. She might be snippy with the person in front of her and roll her eyes at like she might, kind of be tapping her foot and be like, not be able to engage in conversation with her son. There might be all kinds of little behaviors that you on a bad day where that impatience.
Lots of sighing.
Like probably like not super smiley, whereas, Margaret on a good day is going to find that feeling of impatience, like see those behaviors and use those really as a wake up call.
Right.
Of, wow, okay, there's something going on here that I'm, just even standing in this grocery line, it is activating something in me. Like it's pushing a button on. I've always got to be productive. And it's revealing that story and how much that story has me. And can I be with actually the most productive thing right now would be to just be with what is.
Yes.
And then if you were able to relax into that, right, then a whole new Margaret shows up. And she starts playing games with her son. She engages in small talk with the person behind her. They end up having this, kind of random connection that is.
I learn a new way to cook a bell pepper.
Right. Or just these fleeting moments of human contact that actually can be quite significant.
Oh, see, I just made that into a productive moment, didn't I?
I know.
Oh, how funny.
Exactly. That's really funny. But all kinds of new things might become available to you. And you've stayed the type that you are, but you've visited the whole range just in those couple of moments in the grocery store.
So one of your recent ventures was to co-author a workbook with, I'm going to get her, I don't know how to say her last name, Elise
Lunan,
who wrote on your best behavior years ago. But your book is it's a workbook called Choosing Wholeness Over Goodness.
My co-author, Elise, she wrote a book a number of years ago called On Our Best Behavior. And that's really looking at social expectations around what it means to be a woman and how those social norms end up influencing behavior and driving decision making, and often in costly ways.
Yeah.
And as I was describing earlier, when I work with the Enneagram, I always try to combine it with other tools that are really here in service of your growth. And when Elise, her first book was a bestseller, she got a ton of feedback from her audience that like, you really pointed me to something that I didn't realize. Now help me figure out what to do about that.
Ah, okay.
And so the workbook, Choosing Wholeness Over Goodness, is really taking some of the core tools that I often combine with the Enneagram, but are actually tools that work no matter the circumstance, no matter the issue, that are really about how you might work with whatever is challenging you and move through it. And so one of the tools that you reference, which is to date, one of my most powerful things that I use with myself and I use with others, is something I learned from Conscious Leadership Group and Diana Chapman at the Signal Institute, is called the distinction between fact versus story.
Right.
And the idea here is that most of the time, what is driving suffering, what is driving conflict, what is driving us not doing well is not the facts themselves, but the feelings and the stories that we make up about those facts.
Right. And then believe that story.
And then we believe that story. And so just even taking the time to separate out, wait a second, whoa, is this a fact? Or is this a story I'm making up about that fact? We realize, number one, that most of the time we're living in story. There's actually very few facts, because facts are things that are recordable and observable. And then the minute I begin to say, this is a story I'm making up, that's the kind of the first, it's like creates a little bit of space between me and the story. And that little bit of space is an invitation then to be the one choosing the story rather than letting the story choose you.
Yes, exactly.
And so the idea of choosing wholeness over goodness is we have, whether you look at it through the lens of gender or whether you look at it through the lens of the Enneagram, we have lots and lots of stories that we've developed from a very early age to meet our basic needs. And it's usually around being safe, being approved of or loved, and feeling in control.
Right. And would you say it's also usually the verbiage is absolute? I should, I must, I have to. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great, that's a very, anytime there is a should already like ding, ding, ding. The minute I use the word should or must.
Story.
Yeah, story. Exactly. And that language is especially problematic because should and must feel like absolutes when actually they're made up stories.
That's right.
And so the moment I label that as a story, then the should begins to feel less powerful. And I get to work with that. And the first, in addition to fact versus story, the other thing I want to mention is many of these shoulds arise because there's a fear underneath it that we're going to have to reckon with if we dare to do the opposite of the should.
Right.
So like, good moms should put the needs of their children first. That's a story. And if I look at what's driving my belief in that story, it is often because either I'm afraid of looking like a bad mom, and I've been told that that's what good moms do. And so I'm following that norm because I don't, for approval reasons. I'm scared about what might happen to my children. And so by self-sacrificing, I get to be in control of their experience.
Or you think you're in control.
Or I get to think I'm in control rather than me facing that like they are leading their own lives and I have no idea really what's going to happen to them. Or I have to tolerate, the feelings that arise when I let them do their thing. A good mom should put the needs of her children first. And then my 11-year-old son forgets his lunch and I'm in the middle of filming a podcast and the school calls and says, we need you to bring lunch. And then I have a choice point. Do I do that or not? And I'm likely to have uncomfortable feelings arise in that situation of, And over here as a 6, it's going to feel like I can't win. Like either I'm going to have to cut off this podcast and then I'm scared about what might happen, what Margaret thinks about me, what her audience thinks about me, what's going to happen to me professionally if I can't complete podcasts. I'm going to feel really disappointed.
Yeah. Right.
But on the other side, if I, don't go, then my son is hungry. I have to tolerate that. I don't know what the school front desk is thinking about me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what, he's in the cafeteria, like all the other kids have their lunches and he's just sitting there with nothing. I have to be able to imagine that scenario, and it causes feelings to arise over here. And a lot of them are fear-based. Mm-hmm. And so I have to sit with that either way.
Mm-hmm. And what also happens, I think, is that people might listen and say to this and say, well, not all that goes through my head. It doesn't. It's in there, whether you're aware of it or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's a great point, that like what I'm doing is really slowing it down, because most of this is happening lightning fast.
Yes, exactly.
Often unconsciously. And then what we get is whatever choice you make there. But let's say you make the choice that you drop the podcast and you go and take care of your son's lunch. Mm-hmm. And you're going to just say, well, I have to. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because it's so compressed inside yourself that it doesn't feel like there was ever a choice being made.
Right.
And so the point of the workbook and the point of working with someone is to really slow down that whole chain that's happening inside oneself, mm-hmm. the loops of thoughts and feelings and actions, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. and beginning to break down and identify what's driving what is very unconscious and very fast. And so for you, for example, and then I can do myself, when we were talking about the grocery line, mm-hmm. That idea of
back to the grocery store.
Right. The idea of like, I need to be productive at all times. Well, what's underneath that? It's really like I need to feel my own value. Mm-hmm. And then conflating and let me just start with that. Of course you want to feel valuable. All human beings want to feel valuable. And feel like they have inherent value.
Mm-hmm. And also, it's fascinating, isn't it, to think that children, it's 3 or 4 children can grow up or more, can grow up in the same home, and they're not the same, quote unquote, type.
Right. And so to me, this really helps explain why, because, you might, because an 8 goes in to any early childhood environment looking to feel alive, then when that type 8 experiences adversity and challenge, it is going to feel like aliveness is being compromised, and that causes certain behaviors to arise. Mm-hmm. You could have one, little type 8 girl, and then her sibling could be a type 9 peacemaker, right? Mm-hmm. And what peacemakers, in contrast to aliveness, peacemakers are interested in the feeling of harmony. Mm-hmm. When it feels like all of these like disparate notes are blending to create one sound. Mm-hmm. And harmony we experience as calming, soothing, deeply grounding.
Boring for the 8.
Boring for the 8. Exactly. And so this little child, when they experience, let's say neglectful parent or parents who are fighting, or, the whole range of adversity one sees in early childhood, rather than feeling like their aliveness is compromised, they are going to feel like harmony is compromised. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to take on behaviors like mildly disassociating, like making themselves small,
invisible. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Kind of smoothing out, kind of fuzzing out their own needs, mm-hmm. so that they can still feel a sense of harmony, mm-hmm. and blend and merge with the situation, no matter how destructive it might be. Mm-hmm. So that's a very different set of adaptive behaviors.
Sure, of course. Very, extremely different.
That it's the same set of facts. Mm-hmm. Go back to fact versus story. Mm-hmm. Fact is parents fighting. Story is threatens harmony. Mm-hmm. For the 9. Story is I feel scared and weak. My aliveness is threatened, says the 8.
Mm-hmm.
And the story leads to then very different behaviors to try to manage and return to a state of well-being.
Exactly. That's fascinating. Well, okay. So what am I? What does my score tell you about me?
So So I'll start by saying, I think I said earlier that there are 3 or 4 types that you are within 1 or 2 points in terms of the actual test. And so when I looked at those results, I want to dig a little deeper in terms of, which of these is actually driving you. My suspicion, having just spent time with you and heard you sort of readily confess that you feel impatient at times, that's one of the...
I was impatient taking the test.
Yeah. Okay, great. That's what I love to hear. That actually helps me eliminate type 2, the helper.
Mm-hmm.
Not that helpers can't be at times impatient, but that's not like usually typically the first character flaw that arises, or that they self-generate. My one question I'm like looking at these types, and I want to ask you this idea of being productive, right?
Yeah.
Is it a goal orientation or is it something else?
I would not say goal orientation. I would say that I am someone who values time a lot, and that I'm curious, and I love learning and that kind of thing. And so when I'm not in that space, I have a hard time thinking, I want to go to what's next. I'm curious to learn. I'm curious to experience. And sometimes being just in that moment and letting myself be in that moment, it is harder for me.
And so,
maybe it's about control. I don't know.
So that impatience and that preoccupation with time that you're describing, what I hear you saying is, because I want to be productive. Like I want to use the time well.
Right.
Is really kind of the underlying assumption. And I just want to contrast, which to me feels like the achiever, which is one of your top scores and sits right next to the helper. And so I'm going to ask you another question about that. I just want to distinguish, there are other types that could feel impatient, because not because they need to use time well, but it feels very obvious to them, like what to do and why is everyone like taking so long. It's got that kind of that's a great example of it's impatient, but for a different reason.
I'm thinking about my child. I had a neurological illness when I was young, and I know that my mother's protection of me was to say, "Don't do that. You're doing too much. You're pushing yourself too hard. Stop." My dad was similar, and so I think I got kind of rebellious, frankly, and said, "I'm gonna push. Yes, I have a headache. I don't care if I have a headache. I'm just going to do it." And so I think some of this is definitely designed by my response to that kind of slow down. Yeah. Don't be all you can be. And I went, yes, I am going to be all I can be.
Yeah. I look forward to it. And when you think about that, be all you want to be, the way you think about it, does it need to be big and bold, or can it be a little bit more measured as long as it feels like there's forward momentum?
I would say the latter.
Right. That's what I would have guessed. And that's, again, like a distinction between an achiever, which is type 3, who is driven by feeling valuable, versus the 8, the challenger, who's driven by feeling alive. Both of those types can get impatient. but for very different reasons, and it causes different behaviors.
Your panther analogy was not something I went, oh yes, that's me. No.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. So this makes me think the challenge, and so, I mean, the achiever. And the other question I might ask is, given that the helper and the achiever sit right next to each other, and it's pretty common, to like, when I look at, like hundreds of these tests, because they sit right next to each other, they share a lot of overlapping characteristics. And so it's not an uncommon thing to need to try to figure out if, a person is one of two types that are right next to each other on the circle of the Enneagram. If I asked you, would you rather be liked or respected?
Respected. Right off the bat, respected.
Yeah. So for me, for what feels right to me, again, I've just met you, but, and if I were doing like a proper session with you, we'd be really exploring this.
That's fascinating. Well, how would a SelfWork listener, how would they get in touch with you? How do they get to know you better? What's the path there?
Sure, thank you for asking. Well, we talked about the book that I wrote, Choosing Wholeness Over Goodness. That's on, Amazon and lots of other places. My website is CourtneySmithConsulting.com, and you can learn a little bit about my work there. And then it will also take you to my Substack, what we're really up to. I try not to be on social media, but I do write periodically there, and I talk about different workshops and other offerings that I have, where people can learn more about me and learn more about the work.
That's wonderful. I'm very glad we talked, and so glad to have you on SelfWork. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed meeting you.
I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I really found Courtney to be somebody that I could probably talk to for hours and hours, not because we were necessarily talking about my score, although it was kind of fun to find out. She's just a very interesting person to talk with. Very humble, but quite an expert at what she's given her life to, really. So I'd encourage you to sign up for her newsletter. I can't believe in another 6 months, SelfWork will actually have its 10th anniversary. So thank you as always for being here if you're a newcomer or if you've been here over and over again. Both of you and everyone in between is appreciated. In this week and all weeks, please take care of yourself, your loved ones, and your community. I'm Dr. Margaret, and this has been SelfWork.